Have you ever been psyoped before? Well, you're going to today. Today I have compiled some of the most interesting psyops in all of history. If there's one thing that humans are really good at, it's war. And these wars have led to constant innovation. Some good, like the toothbrush. I lied, that I don't think that came from war. But some bad, like the atom bomb. And then some designed to scramble your brain like a fried egg on a hot summer sidewalk. Today we're going to be talking about some of those things. And just like war, it was constantly changing. Sorry, Ron Perlman.
War never changes.
This video is going to be a little bit different than the last one. Hopefully it's a lot shorter. I'm going to briefly cover things that I found funny or shocking in some way, and I hope you guys like it too. Some of these you probably already know. I don't know how deep down rabbit holes you are like I am. Hopefully this will be a lot more funny this time. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you hate me or love me in the comments. Please. Our first psyop comes out of Egypt, where the ancient Egyptians suffered a catastrophic and decisive defeat at the hands of the Persians. How, you ask? By their use of cats on the battlefield. As you probably know, ancient Egyptians worshipped a variety of gods and goddesses, many resembling animals in some way, from Anubis to the one we're going to be talking about today, the goddess Bastet. There's no T at the end of goddess, but I'm leaving that in. Knowing this, it's easy to see why the use of cats on the battlefield against Egyptians would be a fruitful endeavor for the Persians. After the Egyptians were successful in holding off the Persian advances, the commanding king decided to switch up tactics. He had his men paint images of Bastet, the cat goddess, on their shield, as well as gathering up any animals they could find in the area that were sacred to the Egyptians, anything ranging from cats, dogs, ibises, things like that, and just released them on the battlefield in front of his advance. These animals being very sacred to the Egyptians, they feared injuring them. It turned the battle in the favor of the Persians very quickly. Fearing of injuring or maiming the image of their beloved goddesses, the Egyptians were hesitant to attack the Persians in case they might strike their shield with the image of Bastet on it, and they were really afraid of injuring any of the animals on the battlefield. And honestly, if I was there, I would do the same. I love cats. They're one of my favorite animals. If there was a cat on the battlefield, I would just be dead, I'm sorry. Shortly after this, the Egyptians retreated back to the city of Memphis. No, not that one. This one. Where soon after the city was sieged and Egypt was annexed by Persia. Sorry about that, I just got back from work. So let's move on to our next bit of psyop action. Let's talk about Agent Garbo. I know I'm kind of moving from prehistoric times, basically, to the 1940s, but originally the idea for this video was to psyops throughout ancient history, but I started finding a lot of really funny ones, and I figured I'd just do those instead. His real name was Juan Pujol Garcia, I believe.
Juan Pujol Garcia.
And after the Spanish Civil War, he really didn't like any kind of political extremism on any scale, for understandable reasons, if you know anything about the Spanish Civil War. And around this time, late 30s, early 40s, there was something happening in Europe. I fail to remember what it was exactly. Mr. Garcia really didn't like what was going on, and he wanted to do something about it. He figured, who better to contact than the British? He initially tried to contact the British embassy in Madrid, and was denied because they're like, who are you? Why do you want to spy for? I don't know who you are. Well, he didn't take no for an answer, and I like that about him. I believe he tried 3 separate times in total until they finally accepted him. After going to the British, he successfully became a German spy because he created an alter ego that was an extremely extreme person, right? So he was like, hey, I'm just like you guys. And they're like, oh, great, you can spy on the British and the Spanish for us. And that's how he got in. After he was inducted as a German spy, he was sent to Britain to recruit more spies, to recruit more sympathizers. Instead, he moved to Lisbon in Portugal and just started making shit up. He started lying for fun, and that's awesome. He just started making stuff up using tourist guides, public information like train timetables, magazine ads, and he'd just be like, there's people moving in. They're going to be in on this train at 12:30. And then German operatives that he was in contact with were like, oh my god, he's a genius. Needless to say, it was very easy for him to gain their trust after this, and he started kind of moving up in the ranks, getting a little big britches for himself there among the German spies that they assumed he was loyal to them. Turns out he was just lying the whole time. It's pretty awesome. Eventually, he started making up even more fake underlings, like he was originally tasked with, recruiting people in Britain, who would also feed him more of this information. Also, if he ever got anything wrong, he could just blame these fake underlings, so that made life a lot easier for Mr. Garcia as well. It was around this time that he started making up fake Allied convoys that the Germans would go on wild goose chases after, and it was because of that he got the attention of MI6, finally. It's really funny the chase that he sent them on, because whenever they would miss it, he was like, guys, you were just late. You were just late and you should be ashamed of yourselves. And the German command that was listening to him was like, my god, he's right, he's never been wrong before. The only people who has been wrong was those underlings of his, but he got rid of them. My god. So he was really making a good name for himself, and he was just offloading all blame onto everyone around him, and it worked. The guy was a professional gaslighter. It's hilarious. He got in with MI6, and his family was moved to Britain, and it was them, the British, who gave him the name Agent Garbo. He then spent the rest of the war just making shit up, and got the Germans to fund up to a 27-man completely fabricated spy ring at one point. So they're just burning money on this guy, and he's like, oh, I got another one. Can you send me another 10,000 francs? Is that what the Germans use? They use francs? Oh, my bad. They use the Reichsmark. I should have known. Agent Garbo ended up playing a key role in Operation Fortitude, which was the giant misinformation campaign that kept D-Day under wraps. Super good at lying, professional gaslighter. He helped make D-Day happen. One of his biggest aspects of that role was to convince the Germans that the Allies were going to land at Pas de Calais. Pas de Calais?
Pas de Calais.
It's kind of like that, I'll put it on screen here, it's kind of that short part between Britain and France, and he convinced them so hard that the Allies were going to land there and make their main invasion that even after the Normandy landings at D-Day happened, they kept troops stationed at Pas de Calais, because he was like, guys, the people that have landed at Normandy, that was just the forward force. The main force, they're going to be there any day now. I have concrete information that they're going to be there tomorrow, maybe the day after, but they're going to be there, so keep your guys there. He was eventually awarded both the Iron Cross as well as the membership to the Order of the British Empire. So this guy got awarded on both sides of the same war. Pretty awesome. I felt like that was a really good master manipulator psyop guy to include, and he was fueled exclusively by spite, which I really respect. Our next psyop that we're going to be covering is during the Vietnam War, and this is where we start getting into CIA things. This is where it gets nice and juicy. Now, there's a good chance you've heard of this before. We're going to be covering Operation Wandering Soul. This is where the US used recordings of dead soldiers, quote-unquote, to haunt the jungles and scare Viet Cong forces. These recordings said things like, "Come home, Daddy," and the voices of fallen soldiers telling them to go home and be reunited with your loved ones so they could avoid the same fate that they did. They also used recordings of Buddhist funeral music and other eerie sounds, which I'll play for you now. As far as the successfulness of these recordings, it was a little bit mixed. I'm sure the first time that a lot of these troops heard the recordings, they were scared shitless, because anything you hear in the woods at night is going to be terrifying. However, after a while, they just started shooting at where the noise was coming from, and it would hit the speakers and kind of throw a whole wrench in the plan. At that point, they're like, guys, this is just a recording. In fact, my buddy last week, he heard the exact same thing that I heard, the exact same thing that we're hearing now. So unless these ghosts just are really not creative, I don't think it's real. It's also really funny because the Army concept team that thought this up admitted that the Viet Cong had realized what was going on, but still insisted that the operation was a success because, trust me, bro. There was no evidence at all supporting that the operation was a success, but they're just like, nah, guys, it really was. we know what we're talking about. We are the concept team, so I kind of think we know a little bit more than you do. Keeping in that same vein of Psyops in the Southeastern Asian area, we have the CIA vampires. Because of course we do. In the 50s, an operative by the name of Edward Lansdale, a former advertising executive turned CIA operative, was tasked with sowing the seeds of dissent among communist rebels in the Philippines. They've been around for a long time, and he was there to put a stop to it. So upon learning a little bit more about the local lore, he learned of something called the Answag, which was a blood-sucking, organ-eating, bile-consuming creature, sometimes depicted as a bisected humanoid torso with wings and a demonic face. It would also be described as a giant pig, a nasty dog, or even a man-sized vulture. This thing would suck all of the blood, eat the organs, or I believe even eat fetuses from pregnant women, and leave them for dead. So a pretty horrifying creature. Using this information to his advantage, he decided to make an advertising campaign, a terror campaign, using operatives to quietly subdue these patrols, puncture holes in their neck, and then string them up from trees, allowing all the blood to drain out of them, making them look like they had been attacked by a vampire. When other forces would find these patrols after they didn't come back, they would find them to be slaughtered, with the idea that they had been killed by the Answag. There's only one problem with that though. It turns out that in the area where this was taking place, the Answag was not actually part of their local lore. So it was kind of unclear whether the communist forces actually believed that it was the Answag, or if they knew the CIA was there and were just butchering their forces and stringing them up. Both equally terrifying, if you ask me. One thing is for sure though, it did have an effect on morale, which at the end of the day is the desired effect, successfully dislodging a squadron of between 100 and 300 soldiers from a certain area. So it didn't exactly win the war, but it did have the desired effect. Our next psyop comes from the CIA once again. In fact, the rest of the psyops in this video are all from the CIA, but they're so funny, trust me. Have you ever heard of Devil Eyes bin Laden? Well, you're about to. In early 2005, the CIA began prototyping action figures of bin Laden with heat-dissolving paint on the face. What would be revealed once the paint dissolves was basically Darth Maul. I will show you right now. It was supposed to resemble a red-faced demon with black markings and striking green eyes that was supposed to scare children and frighten their parents and hopefully have them turn away from bin Laden. I don't really understand the connection there. I mean, okay, you buy a toy of the leader that I am assuming support, and then all of a sudden it turns into a demon. How would that correlate to him as a person? I feel like you would just not trust the toy manufacturer. The CIA approached a former Hasbro executive by the name of Donald Levine, who is actually the guy who helped popularize and create the G.I. Joe action figure. So he was, he already had relevant experience in the field, as well as close ties to Chinese manufacturers as well as distributors, making discrete manufacturing and distribution of these toys doable by the CIA. While it was rumored that hundreds of these toys had been manufactured and actually shipped to Pakistan, the CIA says that they only have direct knowledge of 3 which were prototyped, and after they saw them, they didn't want to continue with the operation. It's really funny because there is an actual CIA document with all of this information on it, so you're welcome to read that. That's where I got a lot of this information from. What I wouldn't give to get my hands on one of those action figures. You can only kind of use it once though, because once the paint dissolves, then it's just Darth Maul. Maybe like bisect it in half or something and just have it in a display case. Oh man, that would be fucking great. In other news, CIA plays with dolls again, this time a different kind. In the late 70s, the CIA had a bunch of agents operating in Moscow, and the KGB was starting to pick up on that. They would start tailing these agents, and that was no good. So the CIA devised an ingenious plan, one that actually worked surprisingly well. The operatives would use blow-up pleasure dolls to divert attention from the actual agents which the KGB were trailing. In order to do this, they would purchase these pleasure dolls and load them into a jack-in-the-box type device in which they would blow up wearing men's clothing, and I imagine, at least I'd like to imagine, a fake little mustache while their face is just... And they would use that to mask the fact that the actual agent had left the area. As the CIA folks were rounding a corner in their car, maybe just out of sight, the actual agent would step out of the passenger seat of the vehicle, walk a little distance, and then shortly after, they would trigger the little device, and the blow-up doll would pop up in the same seat that the agent was just in. From a distance, I imagine that would look pretty convincing, and apparently it did, because they continued to do this for quite a few years, and it had the desired effect of successfully diverting attention, allowing operations to continue as planned. I would just love to see what it would be like if the KGB agents rolled up on the CIA agents and there's just a guy sitting in a car with a blow-up doll next to him. Evening, officer. My friend and I here were just driving around. Nothing illegal about that, right? Why does she have a mustache? Well, there was no male ones at the store. What do you want from me? You gotta make do with what you got. What's even funnier is that the guy who pioneered this, Walter McIntosh, who was the head of the CIA's disguise unit at the time, he had to personally go into adult stores and buy these dolls, and he did so frequently that he started to be recognized as a regular. I feel like this is the one case when buying those you could be like, it's not what I swear it's not what it looks like, and it actually isn't what it looks like, so props to him, I guess. On to our final psyop of the evening, we're going to be talking about Operation Midnight Climax. It might be what you're thinking. So, from about 1954 to 1956, a sub-project of our favorite CIA operation of all time, MK Ultra, took place. Operation Midnight Climax consisted of the CIA hiring prostitutes to lure young men to safe houses where they would spike their food and drinks with LSD. Operatives would also monitor the situation through one-way glass. And as it was described, the prostitutes were instructed in the use of post-coital questioning to investigate whether the victims could be convinced involuntarily to reveal secrets. That means that the CIA had a little cuck window. Maybe the cuck chair was pioneered by the CIA also, and that's why they're in every hotel room. Hey, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. They pioneered a lot of things. Like, I'm pretty sure they did the pacemaker, so the cuck chair is like maybe one step below that, I would say. Victims were also sometimes fed subliminal messages in attempts to induce them into involuntary actions. Many included criminal activities such as robbery, assault, and assassinations. Could you just imagine a prostitute that they're all done, you know, the job's done, they're just sitting there like, so, that was really good. Have you ever thought about, like, killing someone? Many of the operatives involved in this operation also recreationally indulged in the drugs they were using, as well as the prostitutes they hired. They really did pioneer the cuck chair. I'm sure their friends were just sitting back there going, oh yeah, man. Right off. After obvious ethical questions were raised, Senate investigators were told that the goals of these experiments were to study mind control and sexual behavior. More specifically, to learn about the secrets of brainwashing and to gain control over enemy spies to protect US agents. Other objectives included finding drugs that could incapacitate entire buildings via poison food. So I'm guessing that's where the spiking the drinks and food comes from. They're just making up excuses at this point just to mess with people, which that's kind of a common theme that the CIA is well known for. All in all, that's what I got for you today. Originally, this video was going to be a lot longer. I had a ton of topics to cover, but I kind of wanted to make this one a little bit more bite-sized, see if you guys liked that. It was a lot of fun researching and making this, so let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's any other psyops that you've experienced. Have you been abducted by the CIA or aliens? Comment down below, let me know. A few of these topics I would like to cover more in depth, maybe. A few that I didn't cover in this video I'd like to cover more in depth. So, like I said, if you guys like this video, let me know. But enough rambling for today. Let me know what I can improve. I'm always looking to improve. Any pacing maybe, editing styles, my personality, you know, I can change. I am your Play-Doh, and you are a toddler molding me into the shape that you would like. Maybe. Just kidding.